So welcome everybody to today's episode of Meet the Agent. Joining me is Greg Carnese, an expert agent. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, and thank you so much for taking us up on the offer. Now, Greg, I really want to be able to pick your brain because in my understanding from the conversations that we've had, your approach with your prospects is a little bit different from the majority of agents. Before I jump into that, though, could you share with everybody a little bit more about what kind of prospect type you work with specifically and which areas you focus on the most?
Yes, thank you. So we work with both buyers and sellers. Most of the leads that we get through set schedule, for example, are buyer leads, but on occasion we do get seller leads. I try to focus my business on maybe in an ideal market, 50% sellers and 50% buyers. This year has probably been about 75% buyers and 25% sellers. In working with sellers, we cover a good portion of the Portland, Vancouver area, from the Portland area all the way to the coast, down south, maybe about, I would say 50 miles south of Portland and 100 miles west of Portland. So quite a large radius. And to cover that large of an area, we have 3 agents that we work together as a team.
Fantastic. And thank you for sharing the background. And so one of the things that I would love to be able to delve a little bit more into is, well, Greg, how have you been able to stay in the real estate industry for so long? Can you elaborate a bit on that?
That's a good question. So, real estate, as you know, it goes in cycles. I've seen good markets, bad markets, really poor markets during the recession. And of course, it's been a very good market over the last couple of years. My business is reflected accordingly to the market. So I've had to adjust my business the way the real estate market has been. When it's a slow market, I just need to get on the phone more, start going through my list of past clients, making more contacts. It definitely requires a lot more work. It requires just as much work in a fast market like it is today, because you've got more buyers that are looking for homes. They're all trying to compete for a limited number of homes for sale. So whether it's a slow market or a good market like it's been over the last couple of years, the agent still needs to work hard and diligently.
Definitely. And you mentioned something that I think is definitely going to be a theme for us to discuss here in the conversation. Now, Greg, I find it very interesting that you've mentioned to me that you actually love picking up the phone, having that initial conversation with the prospect and seeing what it is that you can bring to the table, as well as assessing what their current situation is. What would you attribute that love to?
Good question. So I just like talking on the phone with clients. In fact, I'd rather talk on the phone with clients sometimes than actually going out showing the homes. I just like picking up the phone, talking with the client, find out exactly what they're looking for. Are they looking for a home right away, or are they looking for something down the road when something comes along that fits their needs? So that's what I try to do is when I pick up the phone, find out what they're looking for, and then find out their time frame when they want to purchase a home. Is it right away, or is it 3 months, 6 months, or a year down the road? That way I can focus my attention to them accordingly. Once I find out what they're looking for, then I will email them homes in the price range and areas, locations that they're looking in, email those homes out to them, follow up with them about 2 or 3 days later, ask them if they had a chance to look at the list of homes, and then ask them, are there any homes you'd like me to show you that are of interest to you?
Great. And so it sounds like you do really front load a lot of the communication in that you want to make sure that it's more client focused and client centric than anything else. Not really, beating your chest and saying, this is why you should work with me, but instead saying, how can I work with you? Where is it that you are? And what can I do to actually lead you forward in the process? Would you say that's correct?
Yes, that is very correct. Yes. I like to focus my attention on the client, find out what their needs are, their time frame, what their end goals are. Is this going to be a home that they're going to be living in? Is it going to be an investment home? Is it a vacation home? That kind of thing. So that way I know how to focus my attention accordingly to their needs.
Great. And I mean, again, I would say that that's one of the hallmarks, I'm sure, reasons why you've been able to stay in real estate as long as you have been able to, with a 20-year career that you've had in the industry. Taking a little bit of a step back, something that I find very interesting is kind of the the cross applicability of different skills and traits. What was it that you were doing before you got into real estate?
So, good question. I was doing sales, phone sales. I was also doing some outside sales, calling on school districts, hospitals, nursing homes, selling plumbing supplies. And then I got into a situation where those jobs didn't work out. Believe it or not, I ended up taking a janitorial job for, ended up being like 3 years. I thought I would do it for 6 months, ended up being 3 years. My daughter got sick during that time. I needed the health insurance coverage. And then one day my daughter said, Dad, I'm tired of being poor. Go into real estate. And I'd always thought about going into real estate. Well, when you get into real estate, it's very slow. It takes a while to get your first paycheck. It took me, in fact, 6 months to get a paycheck. And it was about a year later after I started that the business started to develop. I had several listings right from the beginning. My thinking was if it had a roof on it, I'll list it. It didn't matter what kind of condition it was in. Well, a lot of those homes didn't sell. But eventually, after the first year rolled around, it snowballed from there. It took off. And then I started to build a business that ended up being quite profitable as the years went by.
Definitely. And I mean, thank you so much for sharing the background. I find it definitely very interesting that, as you mentioned, you had a lot of phone sales experience to begin with, a lot of outside sales, a lot of meeting with people. And again, that puts you very much on a track to do very well in real estate. Now, when you had first gotten into real estate, something that you and I had actually discussed earlier on was the fact that you didn't really reach out to your sphere of influence too much. A lot of your business kind of at the very beginning was already outreach, lead working, and kind of extending your networks past what they were already to begin with. Do you mind elaborating on why you took that strategy?
Well, when I got into real estate, I got my license. I actually stopped by a buddy's home one day, and I think his home was already listed for sale. It wasn't selling. And he kind of told me right off the bat, Greg, just because you're in real estate now doesn't mean I'm going to use you as a real estate agent. And that's not why I never reached out to friends and family, but I just kind of wanted to do it on my own. I started calling on for sale by owner lists out of the newspaper back when we had a printed newspaper, and calling on expired listings. A lot of my business, believe it or not, would just come from knocking on people's doors that had a for sale by owner sign out in their yard. I would knock on their door and find out, have you had much success in selling your home? Have if you had any offers, what kind of feedback are you getting? Just kind of put my foot in the door that way. I would get their contact information, follow up with them a month later and see if they might consider listing their home at that time. And then I found out if somebody said, well, we're thinking about using a realtor, but we're going to wait a month. Well, I found out I better call them in 2 weeks because in a lot of cases, whatever they told me, they would typically cut that time frame in half. So if they say they're going to list a home in 3 months, I better be knocking on the door in 30 days or 45 days. So I just took that approach from the get-go that I kind of wanted to build the business on my own. And that's why I did the cold calling that I did.
Fantastic. I mean, I would definitely attribute a lot of the success that you've been able to share with that fact that you knew from the get-go, I need to be able to service anybody and everybody, or at least whoever it is that I can get in touch with. And so kind of discussing the for sale by owners a little bit more, what commonly was the motivation behind that, behind the seller deciding to sell it on their own without representation?
And when the market is good, a lot of sellers will try to sell the home on their own. That's very common. When the market slows down, they typically will call a realtor to market their home. I enjoyed the challenge of trying to get a listing from somebody that was trying to sell it on their own. I would give them tips on things they could do to help it sell quicker, like if they're doing an open house, take your flyers out of the box, bring them inside the house because you don't want to be just an information booth for people to stop by and pick up a flyer. You want them to come into the open house and then look at the home and discuss with the seller, the different things they like about the home. So I would offer those tips to the sellers. They appreciated that. So I was kind of, I guess, when it came time for them to sell their home with a realtor, if needed, I would basically was top of mind as their first contact that they would reach out to. And so that's why I would offer the helpful tips that I did to for sale by owners.
Fantastic. And I guess another question that comes up for me, was there any times where in trying to assist a for sale by owner, where they, I mean, through getting your help, that they were actually able to move forward? Were there any prospects like that where, again, you were able to help them sell their own home, but not necessarily earn their business?
Yeah, so that was true. Sometimes I would, help them sell their home. They would end up selling it. But what I would try to do is, I figured if they're selling a home, well, more than likely they're going to be looking to buy a home. So I may not have always had the opportunity to sell the home, but in some cases, in a lot of cases, I would help represent them on the buying side. And of course, then they're not paying the commission. So they were more open and more receptive to working with me because they knew, hey, I can sell my home by owner, not have to pay a commission. But yes, Greg, I'll allow you to represent me because the seller is going to be paying the commission in that situation. So if I couldn't help them sell their home, in a lot of cases, to help them out on the buying end.
Great. And again, I mean, it's something that we've seen a lot of the time is that when you're a real estate agent and you make that commitment to not only yourself, but also your community to actually give free-flowing information that's agnostic, right? It's not really tinged one way or the other, but it's just clear cut to say, this is how you would sell your home if you are selling your home and representing yourself. That a lot of the time it does let people know that you have the right intentions, the right motivation, and ultimately they do form some sort of relationship with you down the line. Which again, I just think is amazing, and one of the prime reasons as to why I wanted to feature you on the show, and then also, again, why you're in the industry so long to begin with. A couple of rules of thumb that you just shared with us were things like cutting your follow-up time in half. Could you elaborate a little bit more on why you would want to do that?
Well, I mean, I just learned from experience that most people, if they say they're going to list their home in 30 days with a realtor, a week goes by, they do an open house, the second week goes by, they do an open house with no luck, and pretty soon by the third week, they realize, hey, this isn't working out, I better call a realtor. So they may not, even though they told me initially they're going to wait 30 days to list their home with a realtor, in a lot of cases, they get burned out after a week or two. They realize, wow, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. And so by week 3, sometimes even by week 2, they're thinking, this isn't for me. I can't be around and answer phone calls from potential buyers wanting to see my home at the spur of the moment. So I'm going to get a realtor to do this, somebody that can be available, on the spot to show the home. And so I just found out if I didn't cut the time in half from the time that they told me they were going to list the home, next thing I know, they're probably going to be listening with another realtor.
Fantastic. And I mean, again, that's the kind of forethought and knowledge that a lot of the time, if we don't put ourselves into the client's shoes, we won't really assess, or we won't have that idea to begin with. Something else that I really like that you had mentioned previously is the fact that when you reach out and you reach out consistently, say that, I mean, in a different example, say that you're reaching out to a first-time buyer and they know that they need to repair their credit and their timeline isn't for another 6 to 12 months. In that circumstance, what do you do?
So in that situation, in fact, a lot of times I'll get buyers that say, well, I'm not looking for a home right now. I'm going to be looking next spring or summer. So why don't you call me sometime in 3 months, 6 months, or next year? Well, I know that 6 months from now, they're not going to be thinking about Greg Carnese to call. So what I like to do in order to keep my face and name in front of them is to ask them, well, would it be okay if I could email homes to you in the price range and areas that you're looking in, just so you can see what home prices are doing until you're ready? And that way, when a home comes up on the market, even though they're not ready to buy now, they can see, okay, well, this home is for sale in this particular area for this certain price. My face and name is always in front of them. So when the time comes that they are ready to look for a home and they are ready to purchase, I'm going to hopefully be the first one in mind that they're going to contact.
Great. And I also like the way that you, I mean, even though it doesn't seem like it for you, maybe, right? I don't want to speak for you, but even though it doesn't seem like it's the biggest thing, right? You're just saying, I'll send you information, something that you do for just about anybody and everybody that you speak to and interact with regarding real estate. When it's that first time buyer, I really like the tidbit that you threw out. And again, I don't know if you even realize it, but when you say you can watch what the home prices are doing up until the point where, you're a little bit more ready, right? kind of, again, making it easier, making it so that real estate isn't just another world or a different place or kind of an unreachable goal to say, I need to have my credit aligned and be in touch with my lender and do all this first before I can start looking at homes. You're actually, again, lowering that barrier to entry and saying, well, look, you can monitor and see what's happening up until the point where you are ready and have done all that other stuff. Which, again, I think that is a fundamental, ultimately, to be able to get them excited about the real estate transaction while they do the rest of the homework to get to the point where they can execute. So thank you for sharing on that. Switching gears a little bit here, I did want to discuss, well, actually, really quickly, do you have any other rules of thumb like that, like the follow up in half the time or bringing the flyers into the open house? Any other rules of thumb or best practices that you've been able to pick up in your regular interactions with your prospects?
So thank you for asking. So when I first have contact with a buyer, I've never met them. They're going to tell me what they're looking for. I'm going to email them homes in the price range and areas that you're looking in. But what I want to do, I want to meet them at the office. So what I usually say is, could we meet at the office so I could get a better idea of what you're looking for, answer any questions that you may have about the home buying market, explain the different steps involved in the home buying process, and then so I can get a better idea of what will work and what won't work. And in most cases, buyers are willing to do that. They figure, they're buying the most expensive investment they're going to have in their life. It's worth taking the time and effort to go meet with a realtor. And I like to meet them at the office. I figured, if I get them at the office, they're on my turf, they're on my territory, I have a better chance of connecting with them. So I'll try to set up an appointment either that day or by the next day. When I'm at the office, I go over the different steps involved in the home buying process, answer any questions they have. I explain to them that, because it is a lot of time and effort on my part in running the comparables if they like a home, showing them the homes, setting up appointments, writing up the offers. I explain to them what I like to do when I'm working with a client is to have them sign what's called an exclusive buyer service agreement that just puts it in writing that you'll allow me to represent you as your buyer's agent. And I explain to them it doesn't obligate them to buy a home. It just states that if they do, that I would be the one to represent them. And I explain to them it's basically a team effort, that I'm going to be emailing homes to them. They're going to be emailing homes to me. They might see homes on Redfin, Zillow, whatever. And they'll be maybe driving by a home and say, hey, Greg, can you look at this home for me? Can you look it up and see if we can take a look at it? So it's basically a team effort. And I let them know that by signing an agreement, and I call it an agreement because that's what it states in the Oregon agreement. It does state buyer service agreement. I don't call it a contract because it's not stated as a contract. And if you mention contract, that scares most people away. So I mentioned to them that by signing an agreement, I'm going to be making myself available to show them homes when it's convenient for them during their time frame. And not only, I'm not going to be just showing them homes because any realtor can show homes, but I'm going to be representing them in their best interest, not only when it comes to the price, but when it comes to the inspection items, when it comes to the appraisal, making sure that everything comes together from start to finish. And by signing an agreement, I'm going to work with them as long as it takes to find them a home. I won't give up on them. I'll work with them whether they find a home in 30 days, 90 days, or a year. I'll work with them as long as it takes to find them a home. And when I explain it to them like that, most buyers are willing to sign an agreement. And I explain to them, if I were to sell your home, we're going to sign an agreement that I'm going to be listing your home for sale. The same thing is true when you're working with me as when I'm going to be your buyer's agent. I like to have my clients sign an agreement to put it in writing that we're going to be working together to find you a home over the course of the next year. And I do like to do the agreement for a year in the event that if it does take that long, because sometimes buyers will start their search. They don't find what they're looking for. They continue to rent over the course of the winter. Maybe next spring or summer, they pick up their search again. So I like to do the agreement for the 1 year in the event that if it takes that long.
Great. And I really like the way that you explained it as well, because sometimes it can be scary in the way that you were saying. I'm sure that people get apprehensive, even if it's not necessarily a contract. But again, the way that you explain it and you unpack it, right, that it is a team effort, that they're not going to be left by the wayside trying to figure things out on their own. Really quickly, though, again, because I am very interested by the initial process that you have. Do you encounter circumstances where your prospect that sounds like they're interested on the phone just doesn't come to the office? Is it, or, do you get initial objections to that suggestion to meet at the office, and how do you overcome them if you do?
So, and I do quite often get objections. And if somebody lives, more than 30 minutes away from my office, I will meet them at their home. I'd rather not do that, but I'd rather meet them at their home than not meet them at all. So I will meet them at their home, bring the buyer agreement with me, explain the process to them, and see if they would be willing to sign an agreement. And sometimes buyers will say, well, I'm not ready to sign an agreement right now. I'd rather look at a few homes first. So certainly I will do that. I tell them, well, let's go look at some homes and then see if we could be a fit to work with each other. And if we're going to work with each other for, 3 or 4 days or a week, or if we go into 2 weeks, by that time, I definitely want them to have them sign an agreement. I've been doing this real estate for over 22 years. And on many occasions, you work with a client, you work with them for weeks, months at a time. They go to an open house, they find a home that they really like, and they end up writing the offer with the seller's agent. It's happened. If you've been in real estate long enough, it's happened to all of us. So I've just learned over the years that, I don't want to get burned anymore. As realtors, we only get paid when we close on a transaction. I want to make sure that my clients, if they're going to be seriously working with me, that I want them to sign an agreement. It's just a commitment that we're going to be working together.
Sure. No, and again, it makes a lot of sense. And thank you again for explaining and sharing how you overcome those objections. Because again, it's something that I've heard some agents, especially sometimes newer agents, will have that conception, right? And again, because when executed the right way, it does set the right tone, set the right expectation, sets a lot of things in motion, right? So that you can continue to follow up. But if you don't come across the right way when you suggest, well, we should meet to discuss, then it seems and feels a little bit more pushy. And that's actually, I guess, a question that I want to discuss with you, because like you mentioned, you will mention more than once the relevance or the importance of having a buyer's agreement. How do you find the sweet spot between being diligent, right, doing something that needs to be done, or following up about anything, right, whether it be pre-qualification, getting in touch with a lender, looking at the homes that you reviewed? How do you find the line between diligence without going over into pushiness, where it feels like you're selling or you're trying to make people do something that they wouldn't necessarily want to do?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, yeah, like I said before, a lot of times people, they're not willing to sign an agreement. And it's not that I'm not going to work with them. I've worked with many clients that we go look at homes, and I can tell at that point if they're going to be seriously working with me. Right now, I've got a client we met about 2 weeks ago. He insisted that, hey, I'm not going to sign an agreement with you, but he basically gave me a handshake that I will work with you as long as I can trust you and know that you're working diligent for me, that I'll continue to work with you. We never signed an agreement. We wrote up an offer. We got it accepted. So we're working together now. It's under contract. So I've done it many times. If a client says from the office that, hey, I'm not going to sign an agreement, but when we go to write up an offer, another approach is when we do finally write up a sale agreement, I tell them, okay, in the event that this offer doesn't work out, would it be okay at this point if we could sign an agreement? Because I'd like to have the opportunity to work with you to find something that could work for you, again, in the event if this home doesn't work out. And so, since they're already in the mindset of signing documents, it's just one additional document for them to sign. In most cases, they're willing to sign an agreement at that point, especially if they've already worked with me for several weeks or a month or so.
Sure. And I mean, in that same vein, right, it wouldn't necessarily, I feel like you wouldn't be doing your due diligence or helping the client the best way possible if you let them think, okay, we can only look at one home together, and then if this one falls through, I have to go get accustomed to working with a different agent. But it is, again, something that we do encounter a lot, right? We'll be speaking with an agent or getting updates, and all of a sudden the offer falls through, or some hiccup comes through. In obviously, with transactions in real estate with so many different moving parts, it's bound to happen. And again, so I really appreciate the fact that it's kind of like another rule of thumb or a tidbit of wisdom, right? Is that when you're submitting those offers or submitting even the initial contract, getting that offer, or rather the agreement signed to continue to work together, can still give your deal and give your relationship more longevity in the long term.
Yes. And I let them know that by signing an agreement, I'm going to make myself available on a time frame that's convenient for them. And in this market, if a home comes on the market on a Monday or Tuesday, we can't wait until Saturday to look at the home because chances are it's going to be gone by then. So I let them know that if they find a home that they like, call me up and we should either look at it that day or the next day. And if I'm not available myself, then somebody else on my team could cover for me and show the home to them because that's real important in this market. So, and they appreciate that.
Definitely. I mean, having that, again, it's diligence. It's having that knowledge of what needs to be done, what's the time frame to do it in, and how do I make sure that that process goes all the way through. Thank you so much for discussing, I mean, again, giving all of the background and information that you've been able to share so far, Greg. We are coming towards the end of our time together. I do have a couple of quick questions to wind down with. Namely, do you have any last tidbits of wisdom, any feedback or rules of thumb that you wish you had known for any real estate agents that are potentially new in the industry, or maybe just not seeing the success that they would want to see currently?
Yeah, so in my 22 years that I've been a realtor, I think I mentioned this before. I like to talk to people on the phone, and I think the one-on-one phone conversations is very important in this business. Some people like to text, some people like to email, and I do both of those. But I think your best bet in trying to get a connect with you, to get a client to have a buyer become your client, is to pick up the phone, get that one-on-one personal relationship going with them. It can be hard. I find it hard sometimes to pick up the phone and have a conversation, but I find that if I do that, I have a better chance of getting the client to be somebody that's going to work with me. It's in this market, in this day and age, a lot of people don't answer the phone. So I will leave them a voicemail. I will follow up with a text message. I'll continue to contact them over the course of the next few days. If I don't get any response from them over a week or 2 weeks, then maybe I'll try another approach a month later. But it's very, very important in this day and age to make one-on-one contact. And I find the best way to do that is with picking up the phone and making a phone call.
Fantastic. And I mean, it's something that I've heard said time and again, right, is don't let technology get in the way of actually communicating and connecting. And so many agents look for the bells and whistles, the video emails. And again, those things can work out very well for marketing, but sometimes it's not going to get around the fact that sometimes just getting on the phone and having that conversation really develops a relationship to begin with. Thanks again, Greg, for attending our meeting, being able to share all of this wisdom and background. Last question for you here. Do you have any specific, recommendations or suggestions to any home buyers or sellers in your specific market? Anything that you would want to share with them?
So let's take buyers, for instance. It's very tough in working with buyers right now. I've been working with one set of buyers, I think, close to a year now. I've shown them numerous homes. They make real good offers that are well over the asking price. I tell buyers, when we're going to make an offer, give it your highest and best offer and feel good that if you don't get the offer accepted, just feel comfortable that you gave it your highest and best. If they, could have offered $5,000 more, $10,000 more, and they didn't get the offer accepted, and later they're kicking themselves, well, gee, I should have offered that extra $5,000 or $10,000. For every $1,000 you increase your purchase price, it's only like $5 or $6 a month more in your payment. So if you can express that to buyers, let them know that. And patience is the key. They're not going to get their first offer accepted more than likely. So the more offers that they make, the more homes that we look at, the better chance we are of having to get an offer accepted. In working with sellers, it's a seller's market right now. Sellers know that, but you can't just ask for a lot more than what your home is actually worth because the buyers are savvy. Take, for example, I listed my cousin's home back in March. And we listed it way over the asking price. And the home needed some work. And we had a lot of interest from potential buyers right off the bat. And then months went by, we never sold it because it was way overpriced. It needed a lot of work. Just last weekend, we reduced the price, we got an offer. So the buyers, even though they know it's a seller's market, they're very savvy about the market. So sellers got to realize, yes, you can get a good price for your home right now, but you can't just ask way over the actual market value of the home because chances are it's going to sit. And if it sits, you could end up getting less for the home than if you'd have just priced it right to begin with.
Great. Fantastic. I mean, thanks again, Greg, for everything, for having joined us for today.